Good morning, everyone. Let's start with the editorial today. So, today we are here with a different editorial. So, before starting with the editorial, let's see what is the thought of the day. When the new day comes, new strengths, with the new day comes new strengths and new ideas. Yes, every day in our life is a new beginning. It's another new chapter that we write, and things might not have gone that good yesterday, but what can be done is we can make things good today. So with this vision and with new beginnings in our everyday life, we'll start with the editorial now. So today's editorial is about the inflation that's been happening in our economy for the past few months. So before starting, let's just understand what is exactly inflation so that we don't have problem while we understand the editorial later. So inflation is nothing but when there is a general increase in the price of goods and services. That is what is known as inflation. And there's one thing to be noted, that it is not just because of one good, but if we talk about the entire goods and services that happens in an economy. Okay, so it's not just about one particular thing, but when we take everything collectively, that is known as inflation. And the inflation target that has been set by the Reserve Bank of India, which is the central bank of a country, is 4% and plus minus 2%, which means that maximum it is supposed to reach till 6%, and minimum the threshold limits, which I would say it would be 2 to 6%, like the range is this. If an economy goes below 2% or above 6%, so that means there might happen some problems which might affect the economy as well as we individuals. So let's start with the editorial now. Staying the course on monitoring inflation. Inflation may have moderated a bit, but remains a threat that warrants constant vigil. Now, what they are trying to say here is that we need to monitor inflation means we need to tame inflation. Now, inflation may have moderated a bit. It means that if you talk about the inflation rate that has been happening, that has been recorded in our country for the couple of months, it might have been observed that inflation is going down. Okay, but it doesn't mean that we are out of threat. We still need to remain vigilant. Staying vigilant means that we need to have constant check on the rate of inflation. So let's start with the editorial now. Over this week, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman spoke at length on India's inflation battle, signaling it is no longer a red-lettered a priority as there are more big picture pursuits such as creating jobs, sustaining growth, and ensuring equitable wealth distribution. So now what they're trying to say here is that recently Finance Minister Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman spoke at length. Means she gave a speech regarding what? India's inflation battle, like how India has been tackling this problem of inflation, signaling it is no longer as red-lettered. Red-lettered means that something which is not important now, in the sense that we have been able to tame inflation, so now it's no longer that important as a priority. Why? Because there are more big picture pursuits, means that there are more other things that we need to focus upon. What are those? Such as creating jobs, which means there is high unemployment in our country. Sustaining growth. Sustaining growth means our country is growing, okay? And in order to sustain growth means we need to make that growth remain constant. Like continuously there should be growth, not rise and fall. So that's what means sustainable. And ensuring equitable wealth distribution. Now here it's written equitable. What does equitable means? It means that giving wealth in an impartial manner. I'll explain this with an example. Suppose there are two persons, okay? One is a rich and one is poor. Okay, and now the government is giving some subsidies to them, or we could say some amount. Okay, like the government is giving each and every individual certain amount. Suppose so the government has said that it will be giving 100 rupees to everyone. Now just take it, let's take it with this, understand it with this. I talked about rich and poor person, right? If a rich is also getting 100 and a poor is also getting 100, equal, we are giving them equal money. But do you think that the rich will really need that 100 rupees? He's very rich. Even if the government doesn't give, his life will move on, right? But if we compare about the poor person, for that 100 rupees means a lot. So now what does equitable wealth distribution means? If the government would have given just 50 rupees to the rich and 150 to the poor, that would have been much more beneficial, because we know that the rich does not need that much of money. So that is what they are saying, that ensuring equitable wealth distribution. The government, she remarked, has shown its ability to tackle inflation, having brought it down to a somewhat manageable level in the last couple of months. So now what they're trying to say here is that if we talk about the government, she said that government has shown the ability, like we have shown the ability to tackle inflation, means we have been able to tame inflation or control inflation, having brought it down to a somewhat manageable level. Now earlier, the inflation was very high, but now it has reduced. So now we have been able to bring it down to a manageable level, means something that we can manage if we talk about the last couple of months. This is the finance minister of a country, Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman, holding the constituency from Karnataka. Yeah. So let's move on. The finance minister expects inflationary pressures to be capped due to steps taken by the central bank and government since consumer inflation hit an 8-year high of 7.8% this April, and the recent dip in commodity prices. Now, she's trying to say here is that earlier, if we talk about the month of April, now this is very important, okay? During the month of April, the inflation rate went to 7.8%, and I told you maximum it should reach is 6%. So it reached to 1.8% more, and this is 8-year high. So this is a grave situation, because after 8 years, the inflation has gone so much. So this is what she's trying to say here is that the earlier in the month of April, the inflation was 7.8% and the recent dip in commodity prices. But recently there has been a dip, means a fall in the commodity prices. Though July's retail inflation of 6.71 was a relief, it still remained uncomfortably above the 6% official tolerance threshold. Again, the same thing that I explained to you. Here what they are saying here is that if we talk about the month of July, what happened to the month of July? The retail inflation was 6.71%. Earlier 7.8, now it is 6.1 in the month of July. It has reduced, but it is still uncomfortable. Why? Because it is still above 6%, which is the official tolerance threshold. So still we have 0.71% high. Inflation pressures are expected to remain capped in coming months, says Finance Ministry. Okay, now let's move on to the next paragraph. Price rise in rural India has been much sharper. So if I talk about the rise in the price in rural areas, okay, there has been much sharper, means more. There has been a very big rise. Averaging, if we talk about the average, it is 7.6% in the first 4 months of 2022 and 23. And over 7% through 2022 so far. Just some statistical data they are providing us. Compared to the overall average consumer inflation of 7.1% and 6.79% for the two time frames respectively. So they are just telling us about the rural inflation and urban inflation that's been happening, and she is specifically saying that inflation, if we talk about in the rural areas, was much higher as compared to the other urban areas. So now, why is rural India grappling with higher inflation than urban areas? High food prices hold key. Now, what is the reason? Because there has been a rise in the prices of food. While headline monthly numbers affect sentiment, a prolonged spell of high inflation is more deleterious for households' ability and propensity to spend, denting demand and growth impulses that may catalyze fresh investment from industry. So now what they are trying to say here is that if we talk about monthly, while headline monthly numbers affect sentiments, obviously, if the inflation is riding, it will affect the sentiments of we as individuals, because everything will be at a very high cost. So we will have a lot to spend, right? So it will affect us. A prolonged spell of high inflation. Prolonged means if there is high inflation for a long period of time is more deleterious. Something that is deleterious means which causes harm. Now it will cause harm for us. For households, household means we individuals, those who consume the various goods and services. Our ability and propensity to spend. That's what I told you. If the price of something is rising, it will affect us only, and our ability to spend will increase, like we have to spend more money for the same commodity. Denting demand means affecting demand. Just take an example. If the prices of some good rises, obviously we will demand less of that commodity because we have to pay a lot of amount for it. We will try to reduce our consumption. That is what it is saying. It will dent the demand and growth impulses. Obviously, growth will also decline. Why? Because price rises, we demand less, so output will. So eventually, the production will decline because consumers are not asking for more. So growth will also decline. That may catalyze fresh investments from industries. Now, if production is going down, so obviously less investment will be there. So this will have a bad impact on the economy. That's what they're trying to say here. Economic indicators and various reports on it. GDP, that is gross domestic product, FDEODP, WIR. So this is what there's just this economic survey of 2019 to 20, which is just showing us about the graphical representation of the GDP growth. GDP growth is the growth of an economy at constant prices. Now, another reason is the uneven monsoon so far could further weaken rural demand, even as worries about lower sowing of paddy and pulses are spurring their prices higher in recent weeks. Okay, another reason for high prices is that there has been uneven monsoon, means the monsoon has been erratic in nature, like at times drought, at times heavy rainfall. A proper pattern is not being followed, which will obviously weaken rural demands further. Why? Because see, every crop requires certain amount of rain, right? But if we are not getting that much of rain, so obviously the production will decline. Now, if in an economy, something which is being produced at less amount, the prices of that will rise, isn't it? Like that is how things happen. Suppose if someone is producing very limited, so you will try to offer more prices for that. So as a result, again, there will be a rise in price. So now this is what they're saying, that's lower sowing of paddy and pulses. Now why this is happening? Because monsoon is erratic in nature. It is uneven. So obviously production will be less, and this is the reason which is spurring their prices higher in the recent weeks. And as a result of this, the price of paddy and pulses are rising. The RBI believes that inflation has peaked in India. RBI is saying that inflation has risen in India. Peak means reached to the maximum level. But Deputy Governor Michael Patra is not entirely convinced about the durability of moderating prices despite lower commodity costs, noting that upside risk persists. Now, what here they are saying? See, if we talk about the Reserve Bank of India, it is saying that inflation in our country has reached to the maximum level now. Now it won't reach. But there is a deputy governor who is in RBI, whose name is Mr. Michael Patra. He's saying that I'm not entirely convinced, because if I talk about the durability of moderating prices, means durable means something that will last for a long time. He's still saying that the moderate prices will not last for a long time, because he's saying that there is a tendency that there might be a upside risk persist, means there might still be an increase in the inflation if I talk about the coming months. Indian crisis, unemployment and hunger persist after waves of COVID. This is very much clear. We all know that India has been facing a lot of problem after the COVID came. Unemployment was there and hunger was everywhere. Okay. So now let's move on to the next paragraph. The Consumer Price Index, which short form is CPI, for August due next week, means right now it is not out, but in the next week it will soon be out. Some reckon means something that it could take inflation closer to 7.7% again. Now, some people are saying that again the inflation might reach to 7%. Why? Partly because food price rise. Why? Because there has been a rise in the prices of food that accounts to 45% of the CPI, and CPI, the percentage that CPI holds for food is 45%, and there has been a rise in food prices. So they think that again the inflation might be closer to 7% in the month of August. and a dip to a 5-month low in July may have research, means it might rise again. While one should hope the worst is while one should hope the worst is behind, it is too early to let the guard down. Letting the guard down is a phrase, and it is very common in editorials. When you let the guard down, it means when you don't act careful, like you are like now the things are okay and you are not very much vigilant. So now what they are trying to say here is that things might get worse still, but we shouldn't let the guard down. Like it's too early to be relaxed and calm down because price might rise again. Still, we need to keep a check on the rising in the prices of goods and services. On Thursday, Ms. Sitharaman said that monetary policy tools such as interest rate hikes alone cannot tame inflation. Now, what she said on Thursday was that if I talk about monetary policy, now what is monetary policy? Monetary policy is the policy of Reserve Bank of India that regulates the flow of money in an economy. Okay, how much money is circulating in the economy, that is what a monetary policy is. And she's saying that only this cannot just tame inflation or control inflation. And nudge the RBI, when you nudge someone, nudging means when if someone is sitting next to you, you try to just tease them with the elbow, like, so that is what is nudging. So here they're trying to say, like what she's saying, that nudge the RBI means the RBI should also take certain precautions to not be as synchronized with the developed world counterparts when growth needs to be unfettered. Meaning of unfettered means unrestricted. Now what they are saying is here that the RBI should not act as how the developed countries act, because we are developing country. Okay, so we need to understand about the sentiments of the people also. So just rising the interest rate won't help. We need to understand how our economy is very much different to the world counterparts. World counterparts means if I talk about US, Russia, who are developed countries. Okay, so yeah, moving on to the next paragraph. The emphasis on a multi-pronged approach to contain inflation, including better logistic, fiscal and trade policy moves such as export duty imposed on rice later that evening, is correct. Now she's saying that we need to give emphasis on all these things in order to control inflation. Now what are these? Better logistics should be there, fiscal and trade policy moves, like there should be proper trade and fiscal policies. Now what are these? Such as export duty imposed on rice later that evening, means export means when goods from our country move to the other country, that is what is there, and duty means when taxes are charged on them. Her flagging of wide variation in states' inflation trends and linking higher inflation in some states to their failure to cut petroleum prices may be a tad political. Now here she's trying to say here is that her flagging of wide variations in states inflation trends means there has been a wide variation in states inflation trends, in the sense that in some states there has been a high inflation and in the other states there has been a lower inflation. And she has linked this with because many states were not able to cut petroleum prices. Okay, in some states they were not able to cut petroleum prices, and this may be a tad political. Something that is tad, which means it's in a very small amount. So a bit of political, she's saying that in some states, like here, what I understood was that there are various states in our country and each state is ruled by various political parties. Okay, so now they're saying that this variations in the inflation of various states was because of a bit of politics also. Like she's saying that in some state maybe some political party was not able to cut the petroleum prices, but in other they were. So that is what they are trying to say here. But the government must act expeditiously on a call for a mechanism where the center and state work together to tackle price rise. So working expeditiously means efficiently and with high speed. So now they're saying here is that if we want to control the problem of price rise, what is very much important is that the state and the center should work together. Like they should come out together and work so that price rise are in control. That would be more effective in ensuring that inflation's immediate term modernization is durable. Now this would be more effective because it would ensure the rate of inflation becomes moderate very soon, and it can be reactivated so that future policy reactions are quicker, more sure-footed and cohesive. So now they're saying that if the government and the center come up together, if the state and the central government come up together and work together as a team and try to control the prices, then surely this moderation in the prices will become more durable, in the sense it will last for a long time, so that future policy reactions, like whatever the future policies that we take for our country, are quicker, means instantly we take quick decisions, more sure-footed. Something that is sure-footed means you could say very confident and uniting, and cohesive means it's very strong that no one can break it. So that is what the editorial was. Yes, we are done with the editorial now. So if I talk about the tone of the editorial, today's editorial, it would be analytical. Why? Because the recent speech that she delivered on Thursday about the various, how the government has been able to tame inflation, the editor is properly analyzing what she said, what are the various instances, like how it was earlier, what steps have been taken, what are the future prospects. So a proper analysis of her has been given in this editorial, and how we, the government, the Reserve Bank of India, and the state government should come up together in order to tackle the problem of inflation, so that we household or individuals don't have problem in the near future, and our economy prospers and the growth is not erratic. So analytical would be the tone of the editorial today. So yeah, thank you so much, guys. And yes, if you ever miss the editorial, just with there, it's daily uploaded in the YouTube channel of English learners. So do subscribe, and yes, the editorial is everywhere, every day here. So just you can come up and see it. It will be very beneficial for you all. Thank you so much.